Hi, everyone. Welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thank you very much for joining us today. And Core Recruitment is an international recruitment company, and we specialize in mid to senior appointments for exec and non-exec positions. The reason that we're running this interview series is to inject some positivity into the sectors that we operate in. So we're really lucky to be speaking to some really incredible business leaders who are working for some fantastic companies and who are doing really interesting things. So if you want to see any of the articles or the videos that we're putting out there into the universe, they're all available on our website, which is www.corerecruitment.com. Now, we're really lucky today to be speaking to Lisa from the Venue Group. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. Thank you, Christian. I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. And Lisa is calling in from my favorite city in the world, which is New York. And she is a native New Yorker. And every single time that we are speaking about anything on the phone, the first 15 minutes of the conversation is normally about New York, what's going on, what the vibe is, where the cool places are, what's going on. So as we're doing an interview, I see no point in kind of like changing that up at all, Lisa. So can you tell us a little bit about the vibe in New York and what's happening right now?
Well, I always love to talk about New York. We just got a new mayor.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've all heard. I think that is definitely the biggest topic of conversation around here. I am excited about how young and fresh and new he is. I mean, he's got some big ideas, some of which may or may not be attainable, and I think that obviously there's room for agreement and disagreement between us all about his various political opinions. But he definitely represents something new and something fresh. And I think that that's something that we really need right now. New York needs it. New York has always obviously been quite liberal and very much blue and progressive. But I think in this country, we really need as much kind of progressiveness as we can. And I'm actually not talking about necessarily being a Democrat or a Republican. I think it's just when I think of progressiveness, I think about people approaching things in a new way. And the new way has to be a way in which everybody feels included.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a really good thing. A big tip for New York is that there's a piano bar on the corner of Christopher and Bleecker Streets, which is called the Duplex. And if you go in at 10:30, you can sing karaoke. By 11 o'clock, all the Broadway stars start coming up. And then you notice a real key pitch in terms of like the people who are actually singing in that piano bar. So just to get us kicked off, and in case people aren't aware, obviously Ben from Mumford and Sons and his family have kind of founded this incredible business. Can you give us a bit of an overview?
We are in the business of seeking out, developing, building, designing, and running music venues with adjacent hospitality offerings. Currently, we've got two venues in Alabama, one in Huntsville, the Orion Amphitheater in Huntsville, Alabama, and the Saturn in Birmingham, Alabama. That's Birmingham to you. We are right now in the pre-opening phase of a new venue in Los Angeles called Pacific Electric,
Wow.
which is opening in the Chinatown area. On the same campus and adjacent to Pacific Electric is Mitzi, which is going to be a cocktail bar. And it's obviously a sister property to Pacific Electric, but it's not part of it. It's going to run independently. We've also got about 10 other projects in active development. We are focusing now for the next several years on the United States. Working on something very, very far along on something incredibly exciting in Brooklyn. And as a matter of fact, we have two projects that we're working on in Brooklyn. We're also actively in process in Atlanta, in Detroit. We're also working on a couple of other things, one in Oklahoma City. Basically, we've just got various things going on in the United States, and we're continuing to look in the United States. We don't go fast. We go very carefully. There's not going to be an explosion of TVG properties in the next couple of years, but there will be a couple of great ones. We, our mission really is to create spaces where people can go and connect. We're not at least now in the business of opening the next O2 or the next, the next Madison Square Garden. It's really about smaller to mid-sized venues, giving opportunities to indie bands of all sizes, shapes, and colors. We kind of like to think of ourselves as that place that an artist will go where they have that first kind of pivotal moment, right? Where suddenly they break open. So that's what we do. We're music lovers. We build music venues. We serve drinks, and we also are very interested as a part of that in design and, of course, the whole experience for the customers, because music venues offer hospitality too. And I don't mean just the drinks that people have. I mean the whole entire experience from the moment they buy a ticket until during and after the show. So that's what
Absolutely.
we're focused on.
And one thing that really has always stood out for me kind of about you guys is it is about that experience, and you own the whole experience, and it's about making that experience elevated and better, not only from the customer's perspective, but I guess also from the artist's perspective as well.
Yeah, that's incredibly important. And it's funny because we were just talking in the office a couple of days ago about the fact that it is become a real frequent occurrence that an artist will go on social media and talk about what a great experience they had at one of our venues. And it's really not about us feeling like we're the best in the business. We're not really that interested in thinking about whether we're better or worse than anyone else. It's just that everybody gets really excited about all of those little things that you can think of to make sure that an artist feels welcome and comfortable, and they're not just a product that is making money for us. Because after all, that night is all about them, right?
100%.
And especially if an artist isn't as used to really being treated with a luxury experience because maybe they're not as famous or they're not yet as successful, it's a real thrill to really think through the details and kind of surprise them with different amenities and surprise them with, sort of tours of the city or whatever it is that we decide to give them as part of their experience. And they definitely know that we thought about it, because that's the most important thing, is they thought about me in advance.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Now, Lisa, your background is very much luxury hospitality, very much entertainment, and having dealt with you for years in London and New York, etc., you're a very purpose-driven individual. So from that purpose, kind of like, how has that guided your career in terms of the companies that you've worked with? Because you've not always gone for kind of like the massive entity or kind of like the thing which is opening 500 sites. You've kind of gone for things that you feel an affinity with, right?
Yeah, for sure. Listen, I won't be the first person to say that a job is much more fun if you feel good about the product that you're selling, right? Or the service that you're selling or the experience that you're selling. And it's just always been really important to me, especially as an HR person, that I'm working somewhere that people I hire to work there are going to feel really excited about. And so when I first, basically a very large chunk of my career took place in London. As you know, that's how we met. And I first got there as part of Residor, which was a great experience. But I was sort of looking around and I was like, the Savoy, Claridge's, and it really wasn't about prestige. It was more about, gosh, what must it feel like to work at the Savoy, right? To work at this hotel that just has this incredible legacy and this incredible iconic stature. And what an easy sell to a candidate for a position that would be. Not, and I don't mean that in a cynical way, right? I mean that it's just so much better and so much easier to talk about something, to sell something if you love it yourself. And not only that, but iconic brands and iconic experiences and luxury experiences tend to attract smart, interesting people, right? People who really care about the industry you're in and the experience that guests are having, because it does take a little bit more purpose and effort, and it's not harder, it's just much more focused, right? And so if you don't feel like coming in and focusing on your job, you probably don't want to go to have a luxury experience. So, and also when I went first to interview at Mayborn Hotel Group, which at the time was Claridge's, Barclay, and the Connaught, and now it of course is expanded to a few other places. I was just really excited about my conversation with Stephen Alden, the CEO, who was really himself focused on, yes, these hotels do have such a legacy and are these absolute kind of pillars of luxury in London, and we need to make sure that keeps evolving, right? And that we're not sort of, Sir and Madam in 1962, right? That we, at the time it was sort of the early to mid 2000s, and he was really interested in taking a focus on the individuality of the hotels and the individuality of the employees, and sort of making the employees themselves, because they are interesting and beautiful souls, part of this beautiful experience. So then, and then I, for some personal reasons, I moved back to New York. And I got involved slightly by accident in retail. So what do I do first? I end up working for the Bloomingdale's company in New York City, which is an absolute, New York and New York City and Bloomingdale's are definitely sort of one in the same in a certain way. They are part of each other. And so that was sort of an opportunity for me to feel so good about really being back in my roots, and also, hey, I'm a shopper. I love fashion. And I love a great brand, which then led to Bergdorf Goodman, which is an absolute icon of not just New York fashion, but world fashion. And again, it was such a joy to talk to people at all levels who were just so excited to either be coming to an interview for a job there, or to be working on the floor there, or to be part of the marketing department, whatever area they were working at, because they just loved this brand and the products that we sold so much. And that very much was luxury. Bergdorf has very expensive fashion. And the customers, come from a certain ilk of society, but that's not a certain class. That's just a certain earning level, which of course, especially these days, means a whole variety of incredibly interesting and colorful characters and customers and so forth. And then I think I had this sort of pivotal moment where I realized that, listen, working for Bergdorf was great. It was part of the Neiman Marcus Group at the time, which really was a very large, countrywide, highly matrixed company that, has been very, very successful and does a lot of things really well. But I just felt a little bit like I wasn't making as much of a personal impact as I could be, because I was working for a company that was so big, in very kind of simple terms. And I was presented with this opportunity to come and work for this small, more or less startup kind of company that was just going out there and bringing music, to the world. And I'm an absolute music lover. I love going to gigs. And I could also tell from my first conversations with Ben and other people in the company that I was just talking to people who spoke the same language as me, who get it in terms of, the importance of culture in an organization and what real culture really is, and how that is 100% tied to the mission of the organization, and do people feel like they have a purpose. And I just felt like, wow, this is pretty grassroots. This is pretty much me wearing 16 hats, but it just really drew me in, because I also knew that I would be really proud of what we were doing in the
Absolutely.
world, in the country. So
And how do you like? I mean, every organization at the moment has to make money. I mean, it like has to be commercial. Do you know what I mean? But you guys always seem like you've got a really good balance between that retention, staff well-being, performance, culture building. You seem to have the balance, kind of like. I don't want to speak badly about other organizations, but you seem to be much further along the right lines. Is this kind of like a big topic when you're kind of like having your board meetings kind of like right the way down, or kind of like is there any specific things that you do for your employees when you're building that?
well, as we all hear on LinkedIn every day on many posts, culture is not about having pizza parties, right? It's not that we don't enjoy a good pizza party in the office. Listen, I think that when I think about that question, the first thing that comes to mind is, are a company and a culture and the people and commercial performance, are those things that are different from each other, right? Are those things that can be separated into different conversations? One of the things we've been talking about a lot in meetings with the team is just about how it's not like there is a company, a body that is the company, right? That is sort of, and we are all these kind of poor slogs who have come on board to work for this body called the company, right? We are the company, right? Like sitting here around this table, and I don't even mean just like at a board meeting, I mean with the team, right? Here we are, guys. This is the company. And every single one of us is the culture, right? And now I know that when people talk about culture and there are questions about culture, it's about, are we looking after burnout? Are we looking after well-being? Are we making sure that, benefits and compensation are where they should be so that people feel appreciated and all of that? And of course, we absolutely do that. And I think while I'm talking about that, it's important to say that just as an example, because when we say burnout, what comes to mind right now is travel, right? Because we're getting ready to open in February a new venue and cocktail bar in Los Angeles, and that means that people have to travel to Los Angeles. This also means that not just about this opening, but our development team have to travel all the time and go to different cities and meet with development partners and so forth. And people have families and people have lives, and people travel can affect people. When we do a budget at the beginning of the year, I should talk about the beginning of this fiscal year. It was very much, you tell me what travel you're going to do this year, right? And it's not about, okay, Krishnan, I'm giving you $20,000 travel budget. It's, no, Krishnan, you tell me, let's think about what you want to accomplish this year, what you're going to be involved in, and what you think that's going to cost in terms of travel, including cutting out some of that travel if you feel like it's going to sort of negatively affect your life in any way. And just as an example, we had an employee recently say to us, right now I'm feeling like travel is a little bit, is kind of, I don't know, for the next year, I'd like to figure out a way to cut it down. And the answer to that was not, okay, let's sit down and talk about, exactly the percentage of time that you have to travel. It's like, okay, tell us what this means for you, and let's figure out how you can, how we can. It's not about how you can do your job. It's like how we can fulfill. This is here we are. This is the company. Let's figure out how we can fulfill this in line with your needs. And also, back to this idea of purpose and mission, there's nothing that builds culture better than a purpose and a mission, right? When I was referencing these compliments that we get from artists on our venues, it's like that is worth that more than money right there. For somebody to go online and to see, oh my God, I work at the Orion Amphitheater. I met that artist. Yeah, I did something from that artist. And now this artist is going out into the world and saying, of all the 100 music venues that I played at this year, this is the one that I remember, right? So we talk about purpose and mission all the time. We talk about the kind of music venues that we want to open. We talk about the kind of experience that we want people to have. The task force team, which is essentially some of our specialists in our office, are working together with the senior general manager in Los Angeles to get this venue open. And their vision of what they would love for the experience of this venue to be like is just as important as my vision or Ben's vision. And they are really choosing how they spend their time and how they spend their money. I actually, one of them said to me, I sort of sat in on one of their meetings and I was almost apologizing for like being there, right? Like, oh, I don't want to intrude on your session. And they're like, actually, Lisa, we're really happy you're here, and we'd like you to even be in more meetings because we're just really proud of what we're doing. And it would just be really fun to get an outside, not that I'm an outsider, but just get another perspective and to have our partners really understand the nuts and bolts of what we're thinking about and what we're worried about and what we're concerned about. And that's the company. That's the culture, right? That sense of us doing something that matters and doing something that we love to do. We don't hire people very often that aren't music lovers, including there are definitely people amongst us who are musicians themselves. And I think it's really not about any one thing. It's really about just acknowledging that we are this group of individuals doing this thing together. And yes, of course, some of us have more authority to make decisions than others. But I'll tell you something, there's a lot less of that in our company than maybe some other people are experiencing elsewhere. I do realize that we're small, and that's one of the reasons that this is possible. And one of the things that keeps me up at night and that I'm thinking about 24 hours a day is how do we keep this ethos up, right? How do you achieve this when there are 1,000 employees? And I will crack the code, Krishna, I promise.
It feels like you've worked for some phenomenal organizations between New York and London, and it feels like you've taken the best bits, if that makes sense, from a lot of your learning. Like when you're having kind of like a moment of kind of going, how would so-and-so deal with this, or how would so-and-so do with that? Who do you think of? Who do you think kind of like inspires you, or who kind of like, do you kind of like think of, or who do you call on when you need some advice and guidance and support yourself?
When I think about leaders that have been role models and that I have taken inspiration from, I think of Stephen Alden, who was the CEO of Mayborn when I was there. I spent several years working with him. I think it was 8. And those were really formative years for me. And he taught me a couple of things. One of those things was about the power of directness, meaning be clear and kind. Emphasis on the clear, emphasis on the kind. So, with all my very, very deep love and respect to my brothers and sisters in the United Kingdom, sometimes, especially for a New Yorker, the communication style can feel a little bit indirect. Sort of like, rather, I think sometimes people say, like, if a meeting comes up in an idea comes up in a meeting, someone will say, "Oh, yes, that's interesting. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later," rather than, "No, I think that's a really bad idea," right? But that's all sort of joking aside. When it comes to people, when it comes to dealing with people, and bearing in mind that people are the business, right? And that people are complicated, not only important, but complicated and layered, and really always, well, maybe not always, but 99% of the time have the best intentions. The kindest way to deal with people is to just be straightforward. And it's straightforwardness in the context of understanding them, of listening to what they have to say, of making it clear what the context of a conversation is. Because I think, and I joke about the British culture, but all cultures do it, right? It's difficult to, or people shy away from what they view as a difficult conversation. And I think where I was able to land working with and observing Stephen is like, there doesn't have to be any such thing as a difficult conversation. There's just conversations about what's going on and what the results of what's going on are, and what my role is and what your role is and what everybody else's role is in making that thing different, or continuing to do this thing that's wonderful, or to just sort of cut through this sticking point, whatever it is. And there are people, I think, that thought of him as tough, or that really leaned into sort of the difficulty of an opinion or a conversation. But I don't think it's about being tough. I actually think it's about being humane, because what's not humane is to surprise somebody one day with a change to their employment or some kind of sanction or some kind of disappointment that they never expected, because you were too cautious about just having a conversation. And not only that, but don't manage by process, don't manage by what it says in the handbook, right? Manage, like, avoid ever having to have a tense conversation or something where something really difficult happens, by just being open and approachable and honest at all moments of an employment experience, right? Of just kind of nipping things in the bud, and turning to someone and saying, like, "Gosh, you don't seem to, like, my observation is that maybe you're not feeling as good as you could in this role. Can we talk about a different role, or let's really talk about how happy you are?" That kind of thing never has to be scary. It never has to be
Combative.
It just doesn't, right? And I think I really learned that from him, that it's not really about being tough. It's just about being real and truthful. And the other thing that I think I learned from him is about the importance of individuality. And it really is about, one of the things that was very much true at Mayborn when I was there is there's just no such thing as a script, right? There is just no such thing as the way we answer the phone, right? Or the way that we describe a room, the way that we talk about throwing your wedding at one of our properties, because the secret to that was we hire interesting, intelligent individuals and we train them really, really, really well so that they know backwards and forwards everything there is to know about this property, about the company, about their role, about London, about whatever it was. And then they bring their own thing to it, right? They describe, Krishnan describes our presidential suite in the way that within the confines, or I would say the non-limits of his own personality and his own individuality and his own love for that suite, right? It's one of those things where it's easy to talk about, but like, do you really do it? And we really did it. And we really put structures in place to allow us, training structures and sort of resource structures in place to really allow us to allow the employees to be able to build their intuition and their instincts for what a customer wants and what a customer needs and how that individual can give it to them by giving them this incredible foundation of training in the product and the property and the knowledge of the business. And that was just that right there, actually, I think, is what luxury is all about. Luxury is people talk a lot about personalizing an experience. And yes, it can be, you find out ahead of time what kind of wine a person likes, and you have that bottle of wine in their room, and all of that is good and all of that is important. But what real luxury is, I walk into a place, I feel like I am talking to a person, and that person feels like they can be the person that they are, and I feel like I can be the person I am, right? It's just the ease of individuality.
I absolutely love that. And I'm definitely going to drop Stephen a little line with this interview afterwards so that he can say all of the nice things that you have been saying about him, Lisa. But that is phenomenal. Look, thank you so much for giving us the overview, the insight. I love all the stuff about purpose. I love all the stuff about your mission, and I can't wait to see the new openings as and when they kind of come up. And next time I'm in LA, which might be next year, hopefully, I'm definitely going to drop in and see your new bar in operation.
You must. I will be very upset if you don't.
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, thanks, Krishna. Bye.